In this video, I'll share a list of 6 documentary films I recommend that debaters watch for the criminal justice reform topic. Most of the research we do for debate involves reading books and articles and transforming them into evidence, but drawing on other sources like movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, songs, podcasts, and works of fiction like novels, short stories, and poetry can provide a more engaging and well-rounded understanding of the topic. Documentary films can play a particularly powerful role in our debate research. We're living in a golden age of documentary filmmaking, with more films being produced than ever before, many by independent filmmakers who are producing incredible work outside of traditional corporate media structures. And most of these films are relatively accessible via subscription streaming services and free sites like YouTube and Vimeo. Documentary films can have a powerful impact on what students learn, explains Diana Hess, the noted education professor at the University of Wisconsin. They can be credited with developing students' empathy, enhancing their awareness of issues, events, and people that typically are not given much attention in textbooks, and influencing students' views on controversial historic and contemporary issues. I think this is especially true for the criminal justice reform topic. There are hundreds of documentaries about prisons and policing, and more are being released all the time. I also think the subject matter is especially well suited for documentary films. Reading about prisons and policing is one thing, but seeing and hearing about them can be a much more emotionally impactful experience. And the process of analyzing and discussing different films' perspectives and how persuasively they've argued them can ignite meaningful conversations that richly enhance our collective research about the topic. In the rest of this video, I'll list and briefly explain 6 documentaries I think you should watch. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I've limited myself to films that I've already watched or rewatched during my preparation for the new topic, and there are many well-regarded films that I haven't gotten to yet. I've also focused mostly on recent films, but there are many older films that are worthy of inclusion. The reason I decided to share this video now is so that interested students can start watching, analyzing, and discussing these 6 films, all of which I think will help you better understand and debate the criminal justice reform topic. Future videos will suggest additional films. The 6 films included in this video are organized in chronological order. So without further ado, here are 6 documentaries about the criminal justice reform topic that I think students should watch. First, The Thin Blue Line by Errol Morris from 1988. One of the most acclaimed documentaries ever made, The Thin Blue Line tells the story of the trial and conviction of Randall Dale Adams for the 1976 murder of a Dallas, Texas police officer. Originally intended to be a film about Dr. James Grigson, the Texas psychiatrist who earned the nickname Dr. Death because of how often he testified against defendants in death penalty cases, what Morris eventually produced was a work of explicit legal advocacy arguing that Adams was wrongfully convicted. Because of the film, and the evidence Morris compiled while making it, Adams was later exonerated and released. Watching it today, The Thin Blue Line's filmmaking techniques seem normal, but in 1988 it was highly innovative. Many of its techniques, especially its use of stylized recreations and Morris's iconic style of filming interview subjects, something he's continued to rely on throughout his highly regarded career, have been endlessly copied ever since. This is the oldest film on my list and the one I encourage students to start with. Because it has been so heavily studied and critiqued by scholars, there is a rich secondary literature available to help students analyze and discuss the film. After watching The Thin Blue Line, students will have a baseline for comparison when watching other films. It's available as part of the IFC Films Unlimited package or can be purchased from any of the typical sources. Second, The Central Park Five by Ken Burns, Sarah Burns, and David McMahon from 2012. This film tells the story of the 1989 Central Park jogger case and the 5 men who were wrongfully convicted in it. Burns, perhaps the most famous documentary filmmaker of all time, got involved with the project after his daughter spent a summer working on a lawsuit filed by the 5 men against New York City. Unlike The Thin Blue Line, which told the story of someone who was still wrongfully incarcerated at the time the film was made, the Central Park Five was created 10 years after the 5 men had already been exonerated and released. It sought to bring attention to the case and to encourage the city to settle the lawsuit against it, something that did eventually happen in 2014. In telling the story of the Central Park Five, the film comments on many issues, including racist policing, the war on drugs, the media's portrayal of crime and criminality, and the injustices of the criminal justice system. The Central Park jogger case is one of the most significant criminal prosecutions in modern American history, so it's important for debaters to understand its context and continuing legacy. It is available to stream via Amazon Prime. Third, 13th by Ava DuVernay from 2016. The title is a reference to the 13th Amendment, and the film's argument is that the punishment exception, slavery and involuntary servitude are abolished except as a punishment for crime, has meant that in practice, the conditions of slavery continue today. 13th tells the story of the modern U.S. criminal justice system by connecting it to the country's early history and tracing its development over time. It is mostly told through interviews with a large and diverse group of interview subjects, including Michelle Alexander, Brian Stevenson, Van Jones, Jelani Cobb, Cory Booker, and many others. You can think of it as something like a film adaptation of Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. Unlike other films on this list, 13th is more zoomed out. It tries to tell the big picture story of the prison-industrial complex, and it does so directly. While it touches on many of the specific aspects of the system, it makes its larger arguments more explicit than many other films. I recommend watching it alongside some of the other films on this list, especially the next one, and comparing and contrasting their messages and the techniques they use to communicate them. 13th is available to stream from Netflix. Fourth, The Prison in 12 Landscapes by Brett Story from 2016. Created by a Canadian filmmaker, this is a unique film that seeks to tell the story of the American prison system without commenting on it directly. In 12 short vignettes, Story explores different carceral geographies, or the ways in which the prison industrial complex plays out for different communities of people in different places throughout the United States. It is difficult to describe why this approach is so powerful, but it is. As I mentioned before, I think this film is particularly well suited to pair with 13th. Watching the two films and discussing them together provides a rich portrait of the prison industrial complex and invites interesting conversations about filmmaking techniques, perspectives, and how to most effectively communicate an argument through film. The Prison in 12 Landscapes is available to stream for free from the director's Vimeo page. Fifth, The Blood is at the Doorstep by Erik Ljung from 2017. This film tells the story of Dontre Hamilton, a young black man who was shot 14 times and killed by a white police officer in a park in downtown Milwaukee in 2014. It follows Hamilton's family as they pursue justice for Dontre, a process that is frustratingly unsuccessful. Through that story, the film provides a nuanced explanation of racism, police violence, government corruption, strategies for effective protest and activism, and mourning. By exploring these complicated issues through the experience of one family struggling for justice, it effectively grounds these more abstract ideas and values into something more visceral and emotionally powerful. There's no happy ending, and that's Ljung's point. I think debaters will benefit from its examination of the power structures that serve to enable, manage, and protect police violence, and the difficult challenges individuals face when trying to engage them. The Blood is at the Doorstep is available to stream for free on YouTube. Sixth, The Force by Peter Nix from 2017. This is a fascinating behind-the-scenes look at the day-to-day operations of a metropolitan police department. Nix and his team embedded for 2 years with the embattled Oakland Police Department as it attempted to implement a series of federally mandated reforms. Over the course of those 2 years, OPD endures a series of scandals that culminate in the one-after-another firings of 3 police chiefs in a 9-day period. In the film, Nix attempts to show what happened in Oakland without explicitly editorializing about it, something that leaves the film open to interpretation and criticism from many angles. By showing the reformers' stated goals and training programs alongside the actual operations of the officers in the department, Nix shows rather than tells the audience what to think. And while I expect most viewers will come away from the film incredibly pessimistic about the potential of reforms to meaningfully change the system of policing in the US, allowing viewers to reach their own conclusion based on what they've seen is quite a powerful technique. The Force is available to stream from Netflix. So, that was my list of 6 documentaries about the criminal justice reform topic that I think debaters should watch. I think all 6 films prove Diana Hess's point that documentary filmmakers are public intellectuals who are thinking out loud with an audience about issues that matter in our society. By studying and discussing these films, debaters can significantly deepen their understanding of the criminal justice reform topic in a way that is engaging, thought-provoking, and empathy-building. When watching these films, don't just be a passive observer. In making her case for the use of documentary films as a teaching tool, Hess argues that we should ask students to identify and discuss the perspectives in a film and assess the extent to which they think the filmmaker supported them. There are many ways to focus students' attention on the perspectives in a film. For example, students could participate in a Socratic seminar using the film as the text, or write a film review and then compare it to their classmates and to those written by expert critics. With these approaches, she argues, documentary films become a type of source that we want students to analyze, interpret, interrogate, and evaluate. I encourage you to use these methods in your own study of these films, perhaps by organizing small group discussions with your teammates and friends from other schools. If you have a suggestion for a documentary that didn't make my initial list, please share it in the comments below, and I might include it in a future video. I hope you found this video helpful. Happy watching.